Hello and welcome back to my YouTube channel. In this video we are going to discuss data types. This is the third video in a series of videos called Learning Python. So I'm going to start this video by creating a new file in the folder. I'm going to name this file 3.datatypes.py. So I'm just going to type a list of data types and we are going to discuss them soon. So let's officially start this video, and the first data type I'm going to discuss is called string. So string is essentially a collection of characters, and character is, as you may know, characters are like letters, words, alphanumerical. So alphanumerical characters, and there can be other characters as well, like /, and now I'm going to create a new variable naming it x, and I'm going to set it equal to a string. So in order to create a string, you need to start the string and end the string with special characters, which are going to be either single quotes or double quotes. So I'm going to use single quotes first, and then later I'll use double quotes. So you can type here anything, like I can say, hello, my name is Rizwan Mustafa, and now this is a string, and if we wanted to print it, we could. So let's say I print it, and now we can print it. So this is a string, example of a string, and the second way to create a string is going to be using double quotes. So you need to, as I mentioned earlier, you need to start and end the string with special characters, which can be either double quotes or single quotes. So this is to let the interpreter know that anything in between is to be treated as a string. So I can again write, we are learning Python, and so this is another string. And in order to create multi-line strings, so just in case you needed to create multi-line strings, we can do that too. So there are two ways, again, either using single quotes or double quotes. So the first method I'm going to show is using double quotes. So in order to create a multi-line string, you need to type the double quotes 3 times, and now we have created a multi-line string. So let's say this is a multi-line string. So now if we print x, you will see that it prints on different lines. So this is a multi-line string, and the second method to create multi-line string is again using 3 single quotes, and this is another multi-line string. And if we print x again, you can see this is a another multi-line string. So the class, the built-in class is called str, so which it is essentially a shorter version of, it is the first 3 versions of string, and you can use this to do a lot of things, and I'll explain that later, which is going to be type conversion. So we can convert from different types. So the second data type is character. I've mentioned here there is no built-in character type. Some languages allow you to create a variable that holds a single character. In Python, that feature is not available by default, so you have to use a string instead. If you want to hold someone's initials, or the first initial only, or the first letter of their name, you have to use strings again. So this is going to be a string. And in the last video I talked about Ducktyping, but I did not name it specially. It is essentially the process of adding types to the variable. So if I type str, and now it indicates that it is supposed to have a string value. The third data type is going to be integer. You are already familiar with integers in real life. If you're not, integers are whole numbers like -1 or any number, positive, negative, or 0 that does not have a decimal, or it is not a fraction. So essentially -2, 0, 352 is, these are all integers. So in order to create that, I'm going to say x equals 10. So this is now an integer. The type for integer is int. So this is once again the first 3 characters of the name of the data type. You can do things like add 2 characters to each other, and x plus 2, but we'll talk about this later in another video called operators. The next data type we are going to talk about is float. So float can hold both whole numbers, so it can also hold integers, but it can also hold other numbers like fractions and decimals. So essentially 33 or 302.5 or 3 is any number you can think of. It is with decimal, without decimal, whole number, or not a whole number, or a fraction. It can hold every number. So in order to create a float, I can say x equals 10.0. So this is essentially a float. The type for float is float. So it's essentially the name, but all lowercase. So the next type is double. So double is essentially similar than float, except that it has larger storing capacity. So let's say hypothetically that float could only store this amount of number. A double could store much more than that. However, there is no built-in type for doubles in Python. So the float in Python is essentially both the float and the double, and it works at both, and this prevents any complications. The next and the last type is going to be Boolean. So Boolean has two values. It can either hold true or it can hold false. In many other languages it is going to be true, is going to be all lowercase, but in Python it is not, and the first letter of the word is capital in both cases, for true and false as well. So essentially Boolean variables are used to contain a value that makes sure that the condition is true or false. So let's say that learned Python. So have we learned Python now? So it would be false, but later if you have gone through the course it would be turned to true. There could be a conditional, we are going to study these in the upcoming videos, where we check if a condition is true, and if it is true we execute a block of code. Let's say if learned Python is true, we move on to other languages, or we master Python. But in the case that we haven't learned Python, we do something else. We try to learn Python. So Boolean values are mostly used conditionally execute code, and we're going to study about that later. The last thing I'm going to discuss in this video is going to be type conversion. This is essentially a process of converting from one type to another. Let's say I can have a numerical string, and the string holds numeric string equals, it says it holds something like 10.102.3, and now this is a string. It cannot be treated as the same way as a number in Python. So in order to convert it to a number, let's first print it, and let's just remove all of the other stuff. So if we print the type of string, and if we print, it is a string. But let's say we want to do some stuff with, like, add other numbers to it, and in order to do that we would have to convert it to an integer. And in order to convert it to an integer, let's say we have number, and that is a new variable I've created, and I give it a false type of integer, and I set it equal to int, open brackets, and enter the name of the the variable that held the value you wanted to convert to integer. So essentially this is going to convert this into an integer. So it should be now 102.3. So if I say print number, and then I say print the type of the number, this is a problem because I just included dot, and if you remember, we cannot add decimal numbers for integers. So if I run this again with 1023, you can see the type is integer and the number is 1023. So now we can add say add 2 to the number, and we can now see that it is 1025. So that's one way to convert a string to an integer. We could also convert this to a float. So in order to do that, say number float equals float, open parenthesis, and the name of the variable which held the numeric string. So you could also directly type 1023.5, and that would work as well. So if we now run this, you can see it is a float, and it has the answer is 1025. And if you wanted to convert an integer or a float to string, you can do that too. So in order to do that, I'm just going to erase all of this stuff, and let's say we have a number, it is 10.2, which is essentially a float, and if I wanted to convert it to the string, I can do that. So I'm going to say is my string equals str open parenthesis and number. You can again, as always, type 10.3 directly between the parentheses, but I'm going to do it this way. And let's say print my string, and if I run it, you can see 10.3 is now a string, and integer to float as well. So I'm going to do a quick example. Float num equals 10.3, and let's say if I print integer value of float num, you would see that it turns to 10 because integer cannot handle the decimal places. So let's run it, and you can see it's 10. So this is it for this video. I hope you learned something new, and as always, if you like the video, make sure to like it, and if you did not, feel free to dislike. Comment section is open for the feedback, and if you have any queries or any problems while executing code, you can ask me in the comments, and I'll make sure to reply to them. I hope to see you guys in another one.